Okay, football is back, and with one game remaining, Monday Night Football, I am going to give you 10 must-add waiver wire pickups. I'm actually going to extend the list to 20 total names, so whether you're in a smaller league or a larger league, you're going to have fantastic options in this list to go out and help your fantasy team win next week. Now, football's back, which is great, but that also means that injuries are back, and it also means that there's a lot of things that we were right or wrong on that we need to talk about. So first thing first, I'll give you two names. The reason that these are not, I'm not going to dive into them, is because I believe they should already be rostered in every competitive league at this point. So the first name is Tyler Algier. The second name is Kenneth Gainwell. Both of these guys should absolutely already be rostered in any 12-man PPR league. If they're not, they would take priority over anyone else on this list. Tyler Algier, I don't think anyone really anticipated him playing that big of a role. I do believe that Bijan's role will continually grow and eat into Algier's role, but until we see that happen, Algier is a starting option moving forward. And as far as Kenneth Gainwell goes, my biggest sell all last week, I got roasted for it in the comments. You guys know who you are, was DeAndre Swift. This was before week one started, but DeAndre Swift had less than 29% of the snaps here in week one. Kenneth Gainwell, it looks like he is their guy, so he should be rostered in all formats. Okay, I'm going to go through my top 10, outside of those two guys. Again, they would take priority. At number 10, how about Puka Nacua? Currently available in 97.7% of ESPN leagues and 90% of sleeper leagues. The first time I told you guys about Puka Nacua was over 6 months ago over on our Dynasty channel. He was an auto pick for me in my Dynasty rookie drafts in the 3rd and 4th rounds. So if you guys were with us on our Dynasty channel already, you would have known his name before the year began. But Puka made history in his first start. He put up 10 receptions on 15 targets and 119 yards, 21.9 PPR points in his debut. He put up the most receiving yards for a rookie debut in Los Angeles Rams history. And he is the second player drafted in the 5th round or later with 100 plus yards in their debut all time. Only 2 players have done that, and Puka Nacua is one of 2. He has made some history, and he was very involved, which is what we'd like to see. Snaps, he was 3rd amongst wide receivers. We'll talk about that in a second. Routes ran, he ran 35, which is tied for the most, and he had 15 targets, which easily was the highest mark of anyone on the team. He was targeted on a whopping 42.9% of his routes ran, while Van Jefferson was targeted only on 14.3% of his routes ran. We have to anticipate, after a performance like this, the role of Puka Nacua continually growing. By the way, Cooper Kupp will be out at least until week 5. I would argue that if Stafford and Puka Nacua can continually rack up wins, because Puka made the history, he was great, and they won. That's a very encouraging sign. If they can keep doing this, I would make an argument that even when Cooper Kupp is back, Puka will play a role. I'm willing to spend about 20% of my fab, depending on how desperately you need a flex. When someone makes history, I know it could be a week 1 overreaction, but I want that guy on my team. The second priority for me this week would be his teammate, Kyren Williams. I'm sorry, close your eyes, Cam Akers owners. He is currently available in 89.7% of ESPN leagues and 94% of sleeper leagues. I will say this could be week 1 bait. We will talk about this in a second, and I'll tell you how much fab I'm willing to spend. But there are reasons to believe that this potentially was not a fluke. Kyren had 17 total touches in week 1, turning that into 17.4 PPR points, and he was extremely involved throughout the game plan, not, just in certain quarters, throughout the game plan. In snaps, he outsnapped Cam Akers 53-28. That is significant. He was clearly the receiving back. Routes ran, Kyren ran 29 routes, while Cam only ran 4. And in the carries category, this is the only category in which Cam Akers had more opportunity, 15-22. So it's not like Kyren was just completely uninvolved on the ground. He was involved in the ground and in the air, and he was the much better back. Kyren was also far more efficient with the touches than Cam Akers was. Kyren averaged 3.5 yards per attempt, which that's not even a very good number on its own, but Cam Akers was atrocious. 1.3 yards per attempt for Cam Akers. Unfortunately, for any Akers stands out there, I know there are some of you guys left, it's extremely difficult for, I think, anyone to defend his game after week 1. And again, what I want to say is I understand that this could be a roller coaster in this backfield. We know Sean McVay has a vast history of 1 week it's Darrell Henderson, then it's Cam Akers, then it's Sony Michel. Like, he has been that guy in the past to kind of not consistently use running backs. However, this is what we do know. Kyren was clearly the pass catching role, and he was far more efficient, and more importantly, he had high usage in a winning effort. So why not continue to use him like this? So with my fab, I'm willing to spend about 15% of my fab. And I think it always depends on what your needs are. If you're someone out there who lost J.K. Dobbins, we'll talk about another option here in a second, but maybe you spend 15%. If you're someone who has 4 or 5 stacked running backs, maybe you don't even pick up Kyren at all, right? Maybe you just use a waiver wire pickup and see what your league thinks instead. So it depends on the state of your team. Okay, the third priority, and you could argue that this could be 2B, right? But let's talk about Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. Gus is currently available in 78.2% of ESPN leagues and 80% of sleeper leagues, while Justice is available in almost 100% of leagues across platforms. So we'll talk about these two and who I prefer. But firstly, J.K. Dobbins is out for the year. He was looking so good. And if there's any J.K. Dobbins stands out there, I really loved him this week. He was my start of the week. Look how good the running backs did. I think that would have paid off. He even had a fine game himself before the injury, but he was looking so good. He was involved in the air, a ton of routes ran, and then the injury, the Achilles ending injury. And I hate to say this, I don't think he's going to recover from this at all. Even if you're in, even if you own him in a dynasty league, I think there will not be a J.K. Dobbins breakout. Not only do you have to deal with all those injuries to your knee, now you have an Achilles injury. The biggest reason I was out on Cam Akers in Dynasty, it's just that this is tough. I don't think he comes back from this. So I'm sorry if I have to be that guy, but I don't think he comes back from it. And if you can get even a 2nd round pick in Dynasty, I would take it and I would run. But next up, we have to talk. Who is the next guy? I believe it will be a split, but I believe it will be in favor of Gus Edwards. Justice in week 1 outsnapped Gus 19 to 15 snaps. Both had 8 carries, but Gus was far more efficient. He averaged 4 yards per carry, while Justice averaged only 1.1 yards per carry. That's an atrocious number, somehow even worse than Cam Akers. 8 carries for 9 yards, that's ridiculously bad. However, Justice just had the good fortune, the good luck that he was in for 2 goal line rushing opportunities. He got 2 rushing touchdowns on the goal line. So while Justice may have had the better fantasy day in week 1, if I have to put my money on a player, it would be Gus Edwards being the more valuable fantasy running back long term. So moving forward, I would say Gus gets the majority of the early down work. I would say he gets the more valuable touches. Now, I'm not opposed to chuck in a no fab waiver claim on a guy like Justice, but I'm not going to spend any valuable money on him. Either way, I would prioritize Gus here. I would spend anywhere from about 15 to 25% of my fab, depending on how, like I said, if you have so many running backs, maybe you don't put 25% down, you only put 15, but there is potential trade value. The reason I'm not willing to go higher than that is because I do think there's a possibility that the Ravens look elsewhere outside of the building for their next RB1. And we'll talk about that in my honorable mentions after I go through my top 10. Okay, at number 4, do you need a quarterback? Are you a poor soul like me who started Joe Burrow, lost by 2 points, and had Tua on your bench? Well, in that case, you roll with Joe Burrow and Tua moving forward, right? But maybe you're a poor soul who had Daniel Jones, or, you're in a tough spot, okay? How about you go out and you get Brock Purdy? My guy, Brock Purdy. I've been talking him up on our Dynasty channel all offseason. I've been taking heat. And I just think that he will be this year's Geno Smith. Currently available in 75.5% of ESPN leagues and 48% of sleeper leagues. So it depends on what platform you're playing on. But Brock has been a good fantasy option since he became a starter, period. Okay, let's talk week 1 first. In week 1, as I record this video, he currently sits as a quarterback 9. He went 19 for 29, 220 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game where the 49ers dominated, in a game where the 49ers didn't even need to throw the ball. Imagine how many attempts he could maybe put up in that offense when it's in a more competitive game. But like I said earlier, Brock Purdy has been a good fantasy option since he became the starter. Let's look last year from weeks 13 to 18 when he was a starter for the 49ers. He was 10th in passing yards. He was 3rd in passing touchdowns, 5th in completion percentage amongst starters with a minimum of 100 attempts. And he finished in that time span as a quarterback 9 in fantasy football. Like I said earlier, I could see this being this year's Geno Smith. Not necessarily winning you weeks, but if you have a solid roster, he will get you over the top in many matchups. And his upcoming schedule is very favorable. He's at the Rams in week 2, which is still a very young secondary. In week 3, he's at home versus the Giants, who just got rocked by the Cowboys. In week 4, he's at home versus the Cardinals. With the weapons around him, I mean, it's hard to see him failing in the next 3 weeks. If you are desperately needing a quarterback, I'm willing to spend about 5 to 10% of my fab, but it depends on what your needs are. If you're in a 1 quarterback league and you don't need a quarterback, you don't pick up someone. You rock with who you got if you feel comfortable with your quarterback. But this is a fantastic option for those who need one. Okay, my 5th priority. I'm very excited to tell you guys about this player. Again, if you were with us over on the Dynasty channel, you would already know about Rashawn Johnson. We like to call him Roscoe. We call him Big Roscoe. Why? I don't know. We just like to call him that. But currently available in 78.3% of ESPN leagues and almost 70% of sleeper leagues. He led this team in some very important categories in his debut as the running back 3. Hidden snaps. He led the team, the running back room, 29 snaps to Khalil Herbert's 27. In routes ran, he led the running back room with 18 compared to Herbert's 13. In targets, he led the team, tied, I believe, for most on the team, compared to Herbert's 4. Now, there's important context I need to tell you about. Rashawn Johnson did not play in the entire first half. He only played in the 3rd quarter onwards. So there could be a scenario here where the Bears are like, we're going to lose this game. Let's go ahead and put Rashawn out. Let's keep Herbert out. But just so you know that context, it's important for you to know that Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman were the RB1, RB2 in the first half. But what I will say is he got opportunities and he looked good with those opportunities. Roscoe led the running back room in yards per attempt, so he was the most efficient running back. And he was the only running back that had above the 3 yards per attempt territory. And lastly, the target share is very exciting. He had 7 targets, like I said, tied for team lead of 36 total targets, meaning he saw 19.4% of the team's total target share in his debut as the RB3. If you ask me what my expectations were for Rashawn Johnson in his debut game, I would not have guessed that he would have seen 12 total touches, and that is very promising for him in his first game. Best draft capital between him and Khalil Herbert, talented guy out of Texas. I think his role just continues to grow because he keeps showing them good things on film. I'm willing to spend about 10 to 15% of my fab on Rashawn Johnson. This is a sneaky add. You add him and you wait for his role to continue to grow over time. Okay, my 6th priority today is Zay Jones. Available in almost 70% of ESPN leagues and 62% of sleeper leagues. He was a wide receiver 17 on the week at the time of recording with 16.5 points, 5 for 55 yards and a tutty. Most of us were probably wrong on Zay Jones' involvement this year. I would say 99% of the fantasy community believed that it would be Calvin as the wide receiver 1, which that is true, but then it would be the second option being Christian Kirk in target share. While that still could be the case, we don't want to overreact too much with week 1. What we do know is regardless, Zay Jones will be more involved than I think any of us really would have anticipated. And he could be a legit, flex option moving forward. His involvement cannot be denied. You can't look at his involvement in week 1 and say, that's a fluke. It's not going to continue. He's going to be involved. In snaps, he led the team in snaps with 61. In routes ran, he was second behind Calvin Ridley. More importantly, 8 more routes ran than Christian Kirk. And in targets, he was second on the team, 4 more targets than Christian Kirk. Now, again, I don't expect Kirk to only be targeted twice every game moving forward, so I don't want to overcorrect too much. But if you're in deeper leagues and you need a flex option, you should pick up Zay because we want to see what this could turn into. And he already has a connection with Trevor Lawrence from last year. So I'm willing to spend about 5 to 10% of my fab on him. Okay, my 7th priority. This might be more of a sneaky one. I don't think many people are going to be talking about this player, but let's talk about Zach Moss. Currently available in 88.8% of ESPN leagues and 87% of sleeper leagues. Firstly, Deion Jackson had intriguing touches, intriguing opportunities in week 1. Deion had 19 total opportunities or touches, 51 snaps, 13 carries, and 6 targets. Now, why am I telling you to pick up Zach Moss? Because all indications before the year began were that Zach Moss was the RB1 while Jonathan Taylor was out for this team. We do believe Zach Moss will be back in week 2. And if that's the case, instead of anyone starting Deion Jackson, it will be Zach Moss as this desperation spot start, as I believe, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Colts are going to be playing the Houston Texans. So that's a very good matchup. So if there's potentially 12 to 18 touches out there for a Colts running back in what seems to be a very good running offense while JT's gone, why not kind of take advantage of that if you lost Dobbins to try and kind of, push the pieces together with, Band-Aids, if you will. It is a Band-Aid. It's not a permanent fix. So I'd spend anywhere less than 5% of my fab. This might be one of those names that you just pick up off the waiver and you don't spend fab, but I think he is someone that should be rostered. Okay, here we go. At number 8, let's talk about a player that I loved on our Dynasty channel. He was one of my stashes in our stash video this year, Rashid Shaheed. Fun to say, fun player to watch, available in 98% of ESPN leagues and 87% of sleeper leagues. Guys, all the players I'm bringing you are widely available. I'm doing the absolute most I can to help you guys out. He's a wide receiver 11 on the week so far, 19 PPR points this week. I might be stumbling with my words. Keep in mind, we're in Sydney, Australia. I woke up at 2:45 to watch the games at 3 a.m. this morning, and now I'm recording after watching Sunday Night Football. My words might be struggling a little bit in this video, so hang on with me. I'm giving you good info though, I believe. But Rashid Shaheed, let's look at his usage here in week 1. Keeping in mind that he has been tending to some injuries, but in snaps, he had 35 of 65. 54% of the time he was out there. Routes ran, 25 of 38 possible routes, which means he had 66% of the potential route opportunities. Targets, he had 6. This is important. Just 1 fewer than Michael Thomas, despite playing less snaps than Michael Thomas. And if you're asking me who's more valuable between MT and Shaheed, Michael Thomas is probably more valuable because he will get more receptions on a weekly basis. However, what I will say is that Shaheed probably can do more with a target than what Michael Thomas could, because Rashid Shaheed's targets will be down the field. He's a big play, big threat guy. Michael Thomas is not that. He's the simple over the field, middle of the field type of player. So I'd spend about 5% of my fab on him. Definitely want to monitor his progress, and someone I want on my bench as a stash. Okay, at number 9, we'll talk about some tight ends. How about we talk about Hunter Henry, currently available in 95.9% of ESPN leagues and 93% of sleeper leagues. As things stand today, right now, Hunter Henry is your 2023 tight end 1 in fantasy football. And that's not going to continue. It will not continue. I am not in any way, shape, or form telling you that if you pick up Hunter Henry, all of your tight end worries go away and every week you start him and he's great. I'm not telling you that whatsoever. What I am telling you is that I enjoyed his new role in this new offense now that they finally have an actual offensive coordinator. He caught 5 of 6 targets for 56 yards and 1 touchdown. And it's good to see his role in this offense. He was 3rd in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, and he was 2nd in touchdowns on the team. So again, if you're looking for a tight end option, I think Hunter Henry is a fine one. 5 to 10%. He will still be boom or bust. 5 to 10% per fab. He will still be boom or bust, but he's worth a pickup. And there's a couple other tight ends that I'm going to tell you guys about here soon as well, in case you are looking for a tight end that you want to pick up when we get to our honorable mentions. Am I doing good so far in the video? I feel like I'm killing it. Let me know in the comments. Drop a like. Subscribe if you like the content. Help us get to 150 likes. Can we do that with your help? I would love to. Okay, so let's talk about the last waiver priority. That is Allen Robinson. Okay, we'll also talk about Calvin Austin, but Allen Robinson, both of these guys are available in over 95% of platforms across the board. They're widely available. Okay, and this is more of a band-aid fix, but Deontay Johnson pulled up with his hamstring. It was a non-contact injury. He pulled up, was grabbing the back of his hamstring. Some people are saying it could be 1 week. Some people are saying it could be 5, 6, 7 weeks. Regardless, without Deontay, these two guys will play a role, both Allen Robinson and Calvin Austin. Allen Robinson outsnapped Calvin Austin 56 to 35 snaps and ran 46 routes compared to Calvin's 28. So it looks like Allen's the guy to pick up. However, the good news for Austin is that he was targeted on 21.4% of his routes ran compared to 17.4% of Allen Robinson's. So there's hope there that maybe a role grows because he was targeted more often when he was on the field. Ultimately, the Steelers are not going to be this bad every week offensively because they're not going to face the 49ers defense every week. So they should bounce back. And if Deontay was to miss a lot of time, maybe Allen Robinson becomes a flex appeal. Now, I'm not spending any fab on either of these guys, but I just think they're worth mentioning in case you're desperate out there as waiver priority claims. Okay, I now have a bunch of honorable mentions to tell you guys. I think these are all players that I also want to roster if I have deep benches. But before I get to that real quick, if you want weekly rankings from myself that update consistently, over 300 plus players ranked, start sits of the week. If you want articles to get ahead of your league mates, we got so many articles over on the website from so many talented content creators and bright minds in the industry. If you want access to all that, use our promo code LAND for 30% off your membership. Make sure you use our code LAND. And if you choose the Mother Flocker tier, you will unlock the Fantasy Hotline, which is a direct DM to me for advice. So you can ask me advice in a DM. DM us on Discord if you sign up. I'll get you all hooked up. But to finish the show, man, I hope you guys are enjoying this video because I put a lot of effort into researching the best options. To finish the show, I'll give you some honorable mentions. So let's look at these honorable mentions. At wide receiver, Jonathan Mingo is very intriguing to me. Again, we don't expect rookie wide receivers to be heavily involved, but I was excited with the usage that he got. Tutu Atwell is someone that you could add if you miss out on a Puka Nacua. Rashee Rice is definitely worth an add over there in Kansas City. You know, not a lot of usage, but very effective. The only effective receiver you could say last week. Pop Douglas, Demario Pop Douglas. I think his role will grow over there in New England, and they need someone like him. Now, Kareem Hunt and Leonard Fournette are two very interesting names. I highlighted them in yellow because I think there's a legit chance that they could be picked up by the Baltimore Ravens. I would not be surprised if Kareem Hunt is signed by the Ravens and he's your starter by midweek next week. So I think it's worth a speculative add. And then a couple other tight end options, right? Hayden Hurst is a good option. Jake Ferguson, who was heavily targeted, but in a rainy game, Jake Ferguson is going to be much better moving forward. And then Sam Laporta, the rookie, his role was really cool to see on Thursday Night Football. Okay, so I've been up for way too long watching so much football, trying to get as much information as I possibly can for you guys. So I probably need to go take a nap. my words aren't really lining up all that well. Chaos has ensued. It's week 1. I don't care. I live for this stuff. Hopefully you guys are enjoying week 1. Hopefully there's not too many hard losses out there. I know I took a really hard loss in my home league. Shout out to Joe Burrow for absolutely nothing. No, you'll be fine in week 2, Joe. You'll be fine in week 2. All love, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.